In this case of BP, it asked the state of Louisiana if it could drill in 500 feet of water, and Louisiana said it could. The federal government vetoed that and told BP it could only drill in 5,000 feet of water. Never mind that no oil company had ever cleaned up a broken well at that depth. And never mind that the feds had never monitored a broken well at that depth. And never mind that BP only needed to set aside $75 million in case something went wrong. The feds trumped BP engineers, and the feds trumped the wishes of the folks who live along the Gulf Coast, and the feds decided where this oil well would be drilled.
When government says they are starting a new program under the guise of helping its citizens, it may sound well and good on the surface when presented positively by the mainstream media, but this government misallocation of money and resources always leads to unintended consequences. Let's start by taking a look at one recent government action that was positively portrayed by the mainstream media. Cash for clunkers. A $3 billion federal program intended to give consumers incentive to trade in older, less fuel-efficient vehicles for more fuel-efficient vehicles. The federal government felt that this would both stimulate the economy as well as reduce the nation's long-term carbon emissions.
Every vehicle qualifies. Going on now until the money runs out. It's cash for clunkers.
The government talking points that the news media reported were full of cheerful results.
An opportunity for both consumers and car dealers at a time when the industry needs it the most.
New dealerships saw sales spike. The average trade-in saw a 61% increase in fuel efficiency, and the Cash for Clunkers program stimulated the economy. The unintended consequences that were not reported. The vast majority of trade-ins were paid off, but after the trade-in, the majority of new vehicles that were purchased were financed or leased. So Americans literally destroyed assets in order to exchange them for debt. The clunkers were destroyed, never reaching the full cycle of life of a vehicle. Instead of being purchased at an auction to be resold at a used dealership or purchased by a low-income individual, the vehicles were destroyed.
The engines that have been disabled with the sodium silicate product are not able to be reused.
Auto price inflation entered the secondary market where clunkers were in low supply but constant demand. San Diego, California, police officers have reported an increase in theft for older vehicles in order to sell the parts. Parts that would have made it on the market honestly if not for the Cash for Clunkers program. Used auto dealers reported across the nation that not only were there less vehicles to purchase at auctions during the program, but sales were hurt due to the government-stimulated demand for new vehicles only. Mechanics who make a living off of repairing and servicing vehicles certainly will have less to work on as consumers not only destroyed their vehicles, but were now driving new ones.
Once dealers disable the engine, that cuts the car's value at the salvage yard.
We lose at least 50% right off the top, if not all of it. I can get just as much money out of this motor and trans as I can for the body parts.
It's
if
that
not
valuable.
more. Yeah, it's that valuable.
When you're left with a car minus the motor,
You lose money right off the bat.
Charitable organizations noted that the program hurt their revenues, causing them to not be able to fund programs. Looking at auto sales, we can see that Cash for Clunkers simply took away from future purchases, causing a depressed market for the months to follow. The rebate checks were given out on borrowed money that will have to be paid back with taxes, reducing the purchasing power today of all taxpayers, and in the future through inflation. The politicians concerned about global warming did not consider the carbon emissions that it would take to not only move the clunkers, but to remove and transport the toxic waste of coolant, gasoline, oil, and other items in the engine. A study was done by Duke University that found it took 3 to 12 tons of carbon dioxide just to create a new car. According to Duke, trucks that were purchased would need to be driven for 9 years in order to offset the clunker to new truck trade-in. According to Edmunds.com, the program actually cost taxpayers money. $24,000 per vehicle, not $4,000 as the government estimated. Out of the 690,000 purchases, only 125,000 would not have been made without the incentive of the rebate. One question that our politicians may never know is that if people did purchase a vehicle because of government help, If they are spending money on new debt because of government policy, have any of the Keynesian policymakers considered that they aren't spending money on something else? What would that monthly payment have gone towards? What part of the economy could have been naturally stimulated because of individual choice? Those industries will never know. These are just some of the unintended consequences of what happens when government wants to help. Now let's take a look at all government spending. What if we were to say that all government spending is inflationary? That's right, all government spending. As noted many times by Representative Dr. Ron Paul, government spending causes an inflation tax.
I would get rid of the inflation tax. It's a tax that nobody talks about. Mr. Bernanke admitted, he conceded that inflation was a tax. Every time we see the cost of living going up, that we indirectly are paying a tax.
Congressman, I couldn't agree with you more that inflation is a tax. Inflation is a tax.
What would happen if FHA, Fannie, Freddie, mortgage deductions, and all government interference in the housing market was eliminated? Even Keynesians will admit the housing market would collapse, or the way we look at it, housing would finally find its natural equilibrium that is sustainable by natural supply and demand. Simply put, government spending causes house inflation. Foreign wars making the world safe for democracy. Nothing is more inflationary than war, producing products in order to destroy them, not to mention what the CIA refers to as blowback. That's when the survivors of collateral damage grow up to be, evildoers. College tuition has seen a constant rise since government got involved. The government has created the worst type of demand for our colleges. The cost of behavior has been eliminated. Colleges today can raise prices without the concern of pricing out students, because they know that the government will provide the money. What about regulations and all the employees that enforce them? Certainly they are helping the economy. Regulations force businesses to spend more on not doing business, not hiring, and not creating new services or products. Regulations, however, are priced into your health insurance, shoes, clothing, food, cars, homes, and pretty much anything you buy, causing prices to have a stealth regulation tax. Failure, however, is free and is also just. If a business charges too much or angers consumers, it will inevitably fail without regulations. However, with regulators like the Federal Reserve and the FDIC, we have recently seen that sometimes it's the regulator who keeps bad businesses in business. Or how about the Department of Energy? Their objective is to end our dependence on foreign oil. Since the creation of the Energy Department, foreign oil dependence has risen from roughly 50% to 70%. And when it comes to all their noble green energy regulations, the Department of Energy failed its own EPA audit in 2009. And then, of course, we have government insanity. Washington recently spent $2.6 million to train Chinese prostitutes to drink more responsibly. Road signs costing $300 each are being placed at construction sites to alert motorists that their tax dollars are being spent. And the U.S. Forest Service is spending $554,000 to replace broken windows at a Mount St. Helens visitor center that has been closed since 2007, and they have no plans on reopening it. According to the GAO, duplication programs have run amok in Washington, with 342 economic development programs, 75 programs funding international education, and 72 safe water programs, all with the same duplicate objections. The GAO also classified nearly half of all purchases on government credit cards as improper, fraudulent, or embezzled. What's improper? iPods, Xboxes, jewelry, liquor, mortgage payments, gambling, internet dating services, and vacations. Did we mention that government workers make more than the private sector? Good thing they have the tax dollars to go to the Ritz-Carlton to look at government waste. Government spending causes an increased demand, waste, fraud, and price inflation. Please, the next time someone asks the government for a solution, consider the consequences.